All right, so Ellie, now we got to watch your language.
Aw. You know that I
Yes.
taught like middle schoolers for years, right?
I know, but this is on the library, and I have to keep my I have to keep my job.
I can keep my
Sam
language.
has vet bills. Sam needs a teeth cleaning. He has a broken tooth.
Oh, poor baby.
I know he's very good at the vet today. But welcome to the Jordan Peele deep dive. I think Jordan Peele is definitely one of the most innovative and just interesting directors out of the sort of new class, not only the new class of horror, but just sort of the new school of people like him, Robert Eggers. I guess Damien Chazelle would kind of count. I mean, I would say Jordan Peele is far more interesting than Damien Chazelle, despite the fact that I loved Babylon.
No, me too.
Yeah, Babylon is his best film since Whiplash. Prove me wrong, everybody.
I
was surprised by how good it was.
But yeah, no, he's definitely, I think, one of the more, like, he's become a name that would, not just for me, but for a number of moviegoers, puts a butt in a seat. Similar to older directors like a Steven Spielberg, a James Cameron, where it's like, oh, well, if they're directing, I'm gonna watch it. So I wanted to take a look at his work. It's also, I thought, it's Black History Month. This kind of ties into that. Jordan Peele was born in February. It ties in with that. And I actually thought when I had planned this that Nope was going to get some Oscar nominations, but we'll talk about that next month. Couple of our film programs coming up is next month on March 6th, Mark and I are going to be having our
second annual
the Golden Statue discussion. We called it the Golden Statue Returns, but now I'm thinking we should have called it the Slappening.
Slappening. That's good.
And yeah, everybody, we will be discussing that because how can you not? And in March, we're going to be discussing Japanese actress Setsuko Hara, who is often referred to as Japan's Greta Garbo. If you're not familiar with her, she was in a number of very highly regarded Japanese films, including Yasujiro Ozu's Tokyo Story. And then at the age of 43, she just decided, I'm done with acting, and just disappeared from public life. So we're going to see why her performances and the just enigma around her endure. And finally, in April, we have more stuff down the line, clearly. Actually, in August, Ellie and Todd are teaming up, and they're talking about David Lynch.
Never heard of the guy.
You made me watch Mulholland Drive. No, it's good. I'm glad you did, because I, for a long time, I saw Blue Velvet way too young, so I was kind of averse to Lynch, and Ellie kind of was like, no, give it a shot. And in April, I'm going to be talking about a man that influenced how I watch movies and how I think a lot of people watch movies, and that is the man himself, Roger Ebert. The only man who could actually title a book, Your Movie Sucks, and get away with it. But with that, we're going to move on to Jordan Peele, and I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint. Gonna minimize this. All right, so if you are not familiar with Jordan Peele, oh, one sec. Did I make anyone a co-host? All right, Todd, since you're usually co-host, that's you.
Roger that.
Thank you. All right, back to our regularly scheduled program. So if you're not familiar with Jordan Peele, you've probably seen the name thrown around in both comedy and in horror. So he's an actor, he's a director, he's a writer, a producer, and I had to add this in because I just love this tidbit. A former goth, he was talking about trying to find his identity in high school, and he just like most kids, I went through a goth phase. And I really want to see a teen Jordan Peele goth now, because we got a little glimpse of that on Key and Peele, but I'm like, no, I want photographic evidence. But then again, Jordan Peele could be kind of like me and destroyed all said photographic evidence of their goth phase.
I'm keeping my goth phase going well into adulthood.
I sometimes bring it back. I do mine as more goth punk horror mishmash. All right, so as I said, born in February 19th, so about 6 days, in about 6 days, he'll be celebrating a birthday. So Jordan Peele is biracial. His mother was white, and she was the one who primarily raised him, and his father was Black. And Jordan has kind of talked about this for when he was very young. It didn't really occur to him that he was very different. He was just like, well, my frame of reference was my mom is my mom. He didn't have a great relationship with his dad to the point where he kind of didn't see him for a long time after he was 7 years old and didn't even know that he had passed away until I believe a few months afterwards. But he talks about how, kind of growing up, he was aware that his dad was Black, but the idea of how he would be perceived by everyone else just didn't enter his mind. And this is something that seems to be fairly common around people who are either biracial or if they're in transracially adopted, i.e. someone who is a person of color raised by a white family. They kind of don't have that, oh, wait a minute, I'm perceived differently until they hit their teen years. They might understand that they look different, but the perception doesn't quite hit them until they're older. And he's kind of discussed that being raised in Manhattan kind of helped him out a little bit as well, because he grew up in an environment where he saw people that looked like him and had similar backgrounds, like pretty much every day of his life. So he wasn't an odd one out. However, once he went to school and, his mother was able to send him to private schools, that's where he started to have some of the issues of like, I was considered, the too white or too straight-laced to hang out with some of the Black kids. And of course, the white kids were like immediately kind of assumed, oh, you're from a bad neighborhood or you should be hanging out with someone else. So he kind of just basically was like, I kind of had to find my own group, which did lead him to his goth phase. Once again, Jordan Peele, please show us a picture. I'm sorry. I love that idea also because a lot of Black goths have become a lot more prominent on social media. I'm like, heck yeah, let the goth flag fly. But he also found solace in film and in comedy. So the list of the directors that inspired him are a lot of big name directors. So Tim Burton, Catherine Bigelow, Ridley Scott, Steven Spielberg. Now, Ellie, Todd, Mark, what do you notice about the list of the names of the directors he gave?
Fantasy based,
but
Wonder.
what else? What?
Wonder. None
Yeah,
of them are Black.
exactly.
But
Except
at
for,
that time period, really, there wasn't. I mean, Spike Lee was really
Yeah.
one of the first that you could mention that was late 80s.
Except for Spielberg and arguably Spielberg and Kate. Well, even with Spielberg, they all do horror movies that aren't typical
That's a
horror
good
movies.
point. That's a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Well, and it's not as if there weren't Black directors that existed, but the reach that they had and the distribution that they had and the opportunities they had, you're correct, were nowhere near as plentiful as white directors. And even said the lack of inclusion of Black directors is why I kind of figured I can't do that. And even said I wanted to direct when I was young, but he just kind of felt like, well, I'm never going to be able to break in. So that's why he started off in the acting field. Fun tidbit, for as much as he's known for horror now, he was scared of horror movies as a kid. And there was a quote, this is from the magazine The Crisis, where he was interviewed, and he said, I used to be very afraid of horror films. I was drawn to them, but I was afraid of the dark. I had a wild imagination, and if I snuck away and saw one, it would really get to me. There was one time when I was 12 or 13 and I had a bunch of my I told a bunch of my friends that this really scary story. I just remember it working so well that I felt like I had come into my own in terms of mastering fear. If you can explore fear enough to craft a story and do it with some artistry, then that sort of puts you on the other side. I no longer felt like the potential victim. I felt like I was one of the monsters. And that's when I remember I got hooked on scary stories. And really, that's kind of where he also sort of got that realization of, oh, I can make these things. But he decided, like, I'll still figure out a way to make art. He went to Sarah Lawrence College. Something I had to like triple check to make sure this was true, because I'm like, this can't be. And I actually saw it. There was an interview with him on Sarah Lawrence's alumni website. He majored in puppetry.
Nice.
Like, he wanted to be a puppeteer, and I'm like, that is one where I'm like, I have watched Key and Peele. I've watched all of his movies. I see some of the stuff he produces. I would never guess that he'd gone into puppetry. And at some point, maybe he hasn't done it because he thinks it's too easy. I want a movie with some creepy puppets in it.
I mean, some of the puppetry I remember actually did come up in Key and Peele for one or two sketches, but yeah.
Well, there's that, and kind of in Us, there is the idea of puppetry in Us.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if this is like a hot take or whatever. That's something the kids say, but like, I think that like putting a puppet, like an actual puppet, in an actual horror film is a really fine line to walk because it becomes goofy in a bad way so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know people like Chucky, but those movies haven't been like intentionally scary since like the second one.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, what was even when Goosebumps did it, that evil ventriloquist doll went from spooky to comic relief very quickly.
Some marbles?
Was that it?
That was a Seinfeld joke.
Oh.
The Kramer's evil puppet.
Ellie, look, Todd and I have been trying to figure out how to quarantine the house now, so my brain's in a different place.
In Seinfeld, your brain should always be on Seinfeld.
I'm not on the same skill level as you, Ellie. All right, but he dropped out to pursue comedy, which takes us to his comedy career. And this is where most of us got introduced to Jordan Peele. I got introduced to Jordan Peele via, so he got his start, he did some Second City stuff. He got his start on television via Mad TV. Now, I remember Mad TV in the late 90s when it was Nicole Sullivan, Michael McDonald, Alex Borstein, who you now see on Marvelous Miss Maisel, Deborah Wilson, and Futurama's own Phil Lamar, which was really weird when I eventually saw Pulp Fiction as like, hey, wait a minute, that guy was on Mad TV. But they were a little past my time, so I never caught them on Mad TV. I think like most of America found them on Key and Peele. Did anyone else see them on Mad TV?
I saw Keegan
No.
earlier. Keegan had done a lot of commercial work, especially in Boston with the Celtics.
Oh,
he
that's
was,
right.
He was very, very funny on those commercials. And then when he got his own show, I thought, oh, it's his show. And then, that's where I found Peele.
Yeah.
Well, there's also the interesting story about Peele's involvement with Mad TV. How he was this close to being on SNL, but Mad would not release his contracts.
Oh, that's rough.
I think I saw him a little bit on Second City. I was big into Second City back in the day. He gets got in Fargo though.
Yeah. They I liked that though, because you kind of see that like when they're in Fargo, they're both comedic relief, but they're also playing it a serious, like you can
overly serious.
Yeah.
That's the joke.
Yeah, you can tell that Peele especially gets kind of the Coen brothers style, and he kind of just is able to plug into that. I think a little more successful than Keegan-Michael Key does. But back to Key and Peele. So Key and Peele's like the big breakthrough for both of these actors. And if you watch Key and Peele, there's some stuff that's just very like outwardly funny, but as we'll get into it a little later in the next slide, there's also this weird surrealist absurdist streak where the jump from comedy to horror doesn't seem as weird. And he has said multiple times in interviews, the only difference between comedy and horror is the music. And that is because comedy and horror are both about getting gut level reactions. Comedy is supposed to make you make you find something so funny you will laugh out loud, maybe even involuntarily. Horror is supposed to make you feel unsafe even if you're in your own home watching something on a laptop or a television. They're both about eliciting extreme emotions from people. And I mean, there have been people I've heard argue that both comedy and horror are the most honest genres out there because they are trying to just get you to these gut level reactions.
A good example is watch the LMFAO sketch that they did, where they're in a never-ending party that starts off extremely funny and then just gets very disturbing.
Well, and they do that well in Keanu as well. Keanu, which Todd and I were pretty big Key and Peele fans, so we saw that opening night. Again, you have the absurdity of just these two friends, you know, getting into like giant shootout battles just to protect a kitten. But there's also scenes in that movie there where they're able to kind of craft some tension. So you do see, if like, especially in retrospect, you go back and you're like, oh, that kind of balance of comedy and, you know, other types of genres has always been there. But we do need to give a little more time to Key and Peele because, I mean, yes, this is the breakthrough, but there's so much stuff on this show that when you look at it, you're like, his jump to horror makes perfect sense. Because horror, like they would always do for all 5 seasons, Halloween themed episodes. And they would, even the ones that weren't Halloween themed, if there were scary sketches, like they had this weird surrealist quality. The one I referenced, Baby Forrest Whitaker, is terrifying in a very Lynchian way. Or you have ones that poke fun at the horror genre, like the White Zombie sketch. Actually, Todd, when did we first discover Key and Peele? I'm trying to remember when.
Was that our first or second trip to Philly?
I think it might have been second, where we were just tired. We had been walking all day and we're like, okay, we're just going to see what's on Comedy Central. Oh, hey, Key and Peele, I'd heard about the show. You know, a few hours later, this show's amazing and I need to watch all of it. And actually so if you see the top photo, that is the Luther Obama's anger translator. So the idea of Key and Peele doing politics was not off the table, but they also found a way to address politics in a way that didn't seem extremely partisan. I was just the idea, like, you know, the idea of Obama, a black man, having an anger translator because he couldn't. It's like, you know, I think that's something where a lot of people could just find that idea funny.
Am I losing my mind, or did he end up actually doing like the White House Correspondents' Dinner with Obama?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Keegan did. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the actual. Okay, I'm not going crazy.
Near the end of the run. Yeah.
Yep. But Key and Peele, it ended in 2015. The first thing that was announced was, oh, they're going to write a movie. They're writing Keanu, and they're like, okay, that seems perfectly like, you know, a very natural career progression. They're going from a very well-received television show to writing comedic films. And then in late 2015, early 2016, it was announced that Jordan Peele is writing a horror movie. And while I am nowhere near as extremely online now as I was then, I do remember the reaction to that was pretty much along the lines of, what the heck? Why? Isn't he a comedy guy? And I do find that we go through this a lot with actors who are known for comedy deciding to go into a more dramatic genre, is there's always that, what do you mean? But there are a lot of people who talk about how like comedy is a genre where you have to be like Patton Oswalt talked about it when he did Big Fan. And he says, like, look, comedy is a very vulnerable thing. You have to get up on stage and make people laugh. Like, you're very exposed. So it's easy for me to make the jump to feeling vulnerable in a dramatic role. Monique, I believe, said similar when she was talking about her work in Precious. But getting back to Jordan Peele's quote, he kind of said, like, oh, no, comedy and horror are very similar. It's just, again, the music is different. You're just going for a different reaction. So I think when everyone initially heard, there was some skepticism. There were people who were like, well, he did a lot of horror stuff on Key and Peele, so we're going to guess it'll be more comedy horror than just straight horror. And then Get Out debuts. And while there is humor in Get Out, I don't think people were expecting this to be a very tense social thriller. Although it is a horror movie, I did hate that when it got nominated for Oscars, it was immediately then marketed as a thriller. I'm like, no, it's a horror movie. But
I,
that is
I think that's a bad instinct. Yeah.
no, that is more because the Oscars, I believe they give an Oscar to a horror movie every 20, 25 years, and then they're like, well, we can go back to ignoring it. Who's Mia Goth? Who cares if Martin Scorsese said she gave a great performance?
Agreed.
Anyway, let's nominate that god-awful movie Blonde. All right. Well, we'll get to that next month, but Get Out comes out in February of 2017. So I'm sure we all remember what happened a few months earlier in 2016. We went from the first Black president to Donald Trump being elected. So when this film came out, I mean, I think everyone was thinking about politics at that point. And when it came out, it was hailed as the first real movie of the Trump era. And some people even considered the film to be a reaction to Donald Trump's election, which that is absurd because that is not how filmmaking works.
That's not how time works.
That's how time works. That's a good point, Ellie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not how time works. Jordan Peele did not write this as a response to Donald Trump, not even as a response to when he announced his candidacy in 2015.
You can make that argument about his next movie more so.
Yeah. He actually he wrote Get Out as a reaction to the election of Barack Obama and the idea that we were post-racial. So this is a quote from the same interview from Crisis. And he says, quote, "I wrote the movie when we were living in the Obama administration, and the thing I was trying to point out is that we don't have enough meaningful conversation on race. There was this feeling like we were in a post-racial society. The term was thrown around, and I think we missed a lot as a culture. So I wanted to make this movie that sort of helped bridge the gap between from this illusion that we're past race and the truth of that a lot of people, a lot of us can't avoid and have to face every day. I think that the same silence, the same sunken place that we're living in is exactly the sort of petri dish that allowed Trumpism to fester." But he said, "I feel like in a way, both Trump and Get Out are on opposite ends of the spectrum. Both occurred out of this notion that we don't need to talk about it anymore. But the thing I like about Get Out is what it targets in terms of racism. It's very easy to make a movie about racism where, and this is not to knock the movie I'm about to reference, but let's just say if you were to make a movie like In the Heat of the Night in 2017, it'd be very easy to make a movie like In the Heat of the Night of, oh, a very well-respected Black professional goes down to the South and he's met with racism. I mean, again, obviously In the Heat of the Night, groundbreaking film, groundbreaking in the 1960s, but if you were to do that in 2017, it's like, okay, that's what we expect and how we expect to see racism portrayed on film as very overt. What Peele decided to go to was more of the polite racism of white liberalism. Specifically, you have Bradley Whitford's character saying constantly like, oh, I would have voted for Obama a third time if I could. But then you find out that this family, they don't see Black people as people. They see Black people as things that they can commodify and control. And there's other parallels that you can draw to it. A few people drew the parallels between how Black athletes are seen in media or just Black entertainers as a whole, the very shut up and drivel or don't have an opinion, you're just here to entertain me, kind of the idea of they're just still seen as a body to entertain and to make money for someone else. But so I like that he went after the non-obvious target, and which is often the more insidious target when it comes to racism. He spoke with Time Magazine about it when this movie came out, because this movie was a big cultural touchstone. Like, it's no shock that it won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. I think you couldn't avoid it at that point, because it's like, dang, everyone was thinking about this and everyone was talking about it. But that quote, he goes, "I'm less scared of the person calling me a slur than the person thinking it near me." And the family, the Armitages, are those people. They'll never use a slur. They'll never call him anything bad to his face, but they are still far more harmful than anyone else he encounters in that movie. It's I think that's why it works so well, is it kind of makes people get a little uncomfortable with that idea of like, I wouldn't be like them. right? Also, oh, go on. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I think that one of the things that, like, I was gonna say that I'm from the area of the country that Get Out is sort of set in, like, to the
Yep.
point where my boyfriend went to high school with Allison Williams.
Yep.
So right here, and one of the things that I think um, sort of gets not necessarily lost in the shuffle, but doesn't get talked enough about in the way that this area sort of relates to non-white people and black people in specific, is this idea that that they're a commodity, that they are
Mhm.
like, you can see, I think that what's his name, stapler guy, I forget the character's name,
Toby Huss, the actor.
Toby Huss, the actor, where he talks about how like
Steven
people want to
Roots.
be, yes, thank you, you want to be cooler, and it's like that is a very much like the way you hear people talk about that in this area of the country, like, oh, I'm gonna go Bridgeport because that's like cooler to be, and not because it's like we're not gonna do anything to help that
Mhm.
city be less of a absolute garbage hole. And I think that that's something, I think the commodification of it is a very, very intentional element of the film that I don't feel
Yeah.
gets talked enough about.
Or
Sorry, I
the
didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, it's good. I want more discussion on this. Like, I will also say I grew up in a town called Longmeadow, which is a suburb, a fairly well-off suburb, and it is right next to Springfield, Massachusetts, which, if you were to look at the demographics of the people who live in Springfield, they are the exact opposite of Longmeadow. But I grew up with a bunch of kids who, and let's be real, I wasn't any different than them. We were all upper middle class or upper class, well off, had privilege. But you see these kids like adopting African American vernacular, almost trying to dress like them, listening to the music, adopting the cultural signifiers, but still making fun of the few kids that came from Springfield to go to Longmeadow High.
Mhm.
So it's
One
touching.
one thing that Jordan Peele does a lot too.
Yeah.
I feel like he has the evil that's next to you that you don't realize is there.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite part of Get Out is actually Stephen Root's character, because he's
Mhm.
the one character in the
Oh, it's
whole
Stephen
movie
Root, not Toby Huss. I'm sorry.
that he's the one character in the whole movie where race actually doesn't matter. That like
Mhm.
if you were to somehow solve the race issue in this movie, he is still pure evil in this movie. And he even makes fun of the rest of them for their fad that they're into. You know,
Yeah.
it's
But
interesting.
he thinks spoilers for a movie that's about 6 years old.
Yeah.
Stephen Root's character is a blind man. So he is also someone who, in a way, is marginalized in our society. And he wants, you
The
basically
main
find-
character is a famous photographer.
yeah, the character's a photographer, and they find out that they're a part of this group that essentially does a mind body swap with black people. So one woman found the body of a young black man and put her husband's brain in there.
Mhm.
So again, creepy stuff, very kind of body snatchersy, or Stepford Wives, which is inspiration people picked up on immediately.
It's not subtle.
Yeah, it's not subtle at all. I mean,
That's the
again,
closest, yeah.
we're talking about Connecticut, Ellie.
I will say that the sequence where one of the villains brandishes his weapon and it's a lacrosse stick. As someone from Connecticut, howling, so accurate.
Yeah, but you're right. Stephen Root's character is like, I don't care what color you are, I just want your eye. But the way
That's my
says
favorite
it is,
line for that movie.
it's the way it's supposed to make Daniel Kaluuya's character Chris feel better, but it's like he's just not understanding. No, you're still doing something wrong. And again, that's why I think Get Out is still his strongest movie. I'm like, it's 100 minutes. It has that comedy to kind of relieve some of the tension. I actually love Lil Rel Howery in this because I mentioned Rosemary's Baby's an influence. He is the Hutch character, but unlike Rosemary's Baby, he makes it and he actually pieces everything together and kind of has a heroic moment at the end, which is another way that Jordan Peele kind of subverts some of the horror tropes, because usually in horror movies, the friend who figures it all out is one of the last victims.
I will also say that Get Out has one of my favorite moments from any actor interview, or it might have been it was with Peele himself, where they were talking about in one scene, Allison Williams is like eating Fruit Loops, but she has the glass of milk over here and the bowl of dry Fruit Loops over there. And someone says to Jordan Peele, oh, she's keeping the colored, cereal and the white milk apart. It's symbolic. He's like, no, I just thought that was a really creepy thing to do.
I gotta say, Vanity Fair has done that a few times of Jordan Peele movies, and it's fun he just tells everyone, they did this for Nope as well. Keke Palmer's telling everyone, nope, you're wrong, is so funny. So I am gonna show a clip from Get Out, and sort of what to look for is how he makes an everyday interaction very upsetting. Also, real props to this actress for being so terrifying without even raising her voice.
Hello. I owe you an apology. How rude of me to have touched your belongings without asking. Well, I can assure you there was no funny business. Allow me to explain. I lifted your cellular phone to wipe down the dresser. And it accidentally came undone. Yeah, rather than meddle with it further, I left it that way. How foolish of me. It's fine. I wasn't trying to snitch. Snitch. Rat you out. Tattletale. Yeah. Oh, don't you worry about that. I can assure you, I don't answer to anyone. Right. All I know is sometimes there's too many white people are getting hurt. Oh, 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 no, 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 no. Aren't you something? It's not my experience, not at all. The Armitages are so good to us. They treat us like family.
So, to anyone who has not seen this film, I will not spoil what the deal with Georgina is. But the one thing I will tell you, keep it in mind some of the words she used and did not recognize. So terms like cellular phone, not recognizing snitch and using tattletale instead. When you watch that movie, or if you've seen it before, watch it a second time, it all makes sense. And that's actually one of the things I love about Peele's movies is you can go back and you see how well written they are in terms of all of the signs are there, but they're not overtly obvious. And it doesn't diminish on a rewatch. If anything, it's more like, how did I not see this coming? So moving on to Us. There's someone in the chat. Oh, someone said, sorry, I'm late. That is okay. So Us, as long as we're talking about Oscars ignoring horror, for 2019, Lupita would have been my absolute pick to win Best Actress. The woman played 2 roles. What more do you want?
Completely agree.
What more do you want? But, Oscars and horror tend to not mix. So what we see here, Get Out is a fairly small movie. It's got a small cast. It has only 1 or 2 locations. This Peele up the scale a little bit. Well, there's still not too many location changes, or if they are, they're not huge, big set pieces. there's definitely more going on, although we still have a fairly small main cast. So Lupita Nyong'o's character, Adeline Wilson, her 2 kids and her husband go out to her family beach house in, is it Santa Clara?
I believe so.
Okay. A beach. This is a beach that she went to as a child, and actually in the prologue of the film, they reference that the Lost Boys is filming down the pier, which I kind of love, because in an alternate movie, Adeline's dad just took her to the filming and she got to see the sax guy just playing the
Yes.
saxophone. And I'm like, hey, we would have had an entirely different picture. So this was very, highly anticipated. When the trailer dropped around Christmas of 2018, everyone was like, I'm in, I'm here.
It's a rockin' trailer.
It is. Jordan Peele makes good trailers. We'll get there with my favorite one, but made for only $20 million, by the way. Which is almost unheard of, because if you look at that movie, it looks more expensive.
I mean, I think that good directors, it doesn't have a lot of effects aside from like blood effects. It's just like doubling, which is a pain in the neck to shoot, but not expensive to shoot.
The
if you know
story
what
is
you're doing.
epic, but you don't. There's very few visual epic scenes.
Yeah, there's very little, except for like the final.
Yeah,
set.
the ending.
Except for the final scene, the set for that would be very expensive. It's not that much more expensive than a kind of expensive episode of the X-Files.
Yeah, right.
Well, and speaking of television, the inspiration for this was not a film, although when Peele talked about it, he was influenced by like the Universal monster movies, and there is a little bit of a B movie quality to this. I absolutely, and I love him for that. I made the comparison earlier to M. Night Shyamalan, where everyone saw Get Out, and then every subsequent movie for Peele, everyone's like, well, what's the racial element going to be? However, whereas for M. Night, it's what's the twist? But oh, Jang, what was my train of thought? Oh, for M. Night Shyamalan, I feel M. Night Shyamalan became a better director when he just embraced, I'm going to make B movies, and that's it.
I'm a huge fan of movies like It Follows or this, where it's just like, what if we took a B movie and gave it a decent script?
Decent script, decent budget, good acting. Look at how much it improves.
Which is kind of what Spielberg and Lucas did in the 70s and 80s. They're just doing it
Exactly.
now with horror.
Yep. So Peele grew up loving The Twilight Zone, and there's a really great episode called Mirror Image. It's Vera Miles is the main character. She's at a bus station, and she is convinced she saw a woman that looked like her, and she becomes more and more paranoid that woman is trying to replace her. So we have in this film, we get there, and Adeline already just feels unsettled being at the beach house, being at the beach. And at first you get some hints that her mother recently died, and maybe being here brings back memories. But you start to see that she is afraid of something, and she feels like another version of her is following her. And then that night, she and her family encounter doppelgangers who look just like them, only they don't have speech, with the exception of Lupita Nyong'o's doppelganger. And there is this whole speech that Red, which is Adeline's tether, gives, where it is, when the girl above ground had toys, they were soft. When the girl underground, she could only play with scissors that cut her hands. The girl above was fed, nice meals. The girl below had to eat raw rabbit. And a lot of people started to connect the dots of this, is the idea of an underclass. And in America does not make too many films about class, or they didn't used to. I feel we're seeing a lot more movies in the United States address class.
It's kind of zeitgeist right now, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's in the zeitgeist. It's something people are thinking about. I think like the fact that this and Parasite came out in the same year, I don't want to say it's a happy accident, but I think it shows that there are a lot of creators who are seeing that, like, just data-wise, economic inequality is growing, social mobility is something that's not the same. And there are people who, because of globalization and more of our knowledge of stuff like sweatshops, the factories that make our iPhone, the people that mine the minerals to power our batteries. It's that idea. And also the TV show The Good Place was out around this time as well. There was this idea of, in order for some of us to live a good life, there's usually someone else that suffers. And while Peele is doing a lot of the, what if you are the monster? What if the worst part of you came back to you? There is also the idea of, what if you are the monster is simply by living well, someone else is suffering. And The Good Place, I think, really got into that in a way that this film couldn't. But seeing the analysis online was a lot of fun, because it was a lot of people starting to connect the dots of like, oh no, oh wow. And again, I don't want to spoil the film, because the film also just works as a good kind of B horror movie. The idea of, what if one night you and your family saw people that looked like you, but they were monsters who wanted to kill you. But there is that idea, like one of the motifs that we see in this movie is Hands Across America, which, while it was well-intentioned, was a fairly empty gesture in terms of actually helping people who were economically downtrodden. And it becomes the tethers, their protest symbol, as they're going throughout the area, taking out the above versions. But
I don't want to. I have so many thoughts on that, and how like both this and Parasite make their metaphor about underclasses real, but I can't go into it without spoiling it.
Yeah.
I know,
because the final twist is really important to my analysis.
Yeah.
Well, there is, without spoiling, you find out at the end that someone actually was born underground, and they swapped with someone else.
And if you watch it a second time over, he directs that character so well, because you see clues throughout the whole movie when you're not realizing it.
But one of the things that's tragic is the character said, I don't know why you just left me down. You left me down here instead, because my mother would have taken us both. And you actually do see that the character that was the underground person who came above ground was able to, with money, with means, with education, lived a very normal and good life. And so there is this idea, if we're looking at it in the framing of class and the underclass, is how many people, if they had just had a little more access, could have maybe gotten a little further. And there's a great quote, I think it might have been Stephen Jay Gould. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's stuck with me for a while. But he was saying, I'm not that concerned with studying Einstein's brain to see how brilliant he was and what made him brilliant. What I am concerned with is how many Einsteins have just floundered in sweatshops, in cotton fields, in mines. And that is something that when I watch Us now, I absolutely think about, kind of that idea of, he does show in this movie, with nurture, with means, the people who were underground could be just as successful. Also, but on a campy level, because I don't want to make this too heavy, there's some great kills in this movie.
Another thing about this movie that I like, Stephen King has a great quote where he says, everyone wants you to explain what's going on, but if you explain something too much, then it loses its magic. And I feel like Us explains what's going on just the right amount, because no explanation will make any sense anyway. So it does it just to the point where you go, oh yeah, I can see that, and buy into what's happening without going too far and still keeping the mystery.
Yeah, and there's always the possibility that the explanation we're given
is BS. Yeah, that's true.
That's what Liz was saying about, like, I do want to get back into the heavy stuff. I don't want to get too far into the heavy stuff because we're a little short on time. But like, I think that one of the things that twist, like who turns out to, not just who turns out to be underground, but that one of the characters turns out to have been from underground, sort of, we want to think of these people as essentially different, that there is an essential different, but they're not. They're just like
us. And there's that great line with when her son, they're like, who are you? And her son just says, it's us.
It's as I said, it makes its metaphor for classism extremely literal in a very good way.
Well, and I don't know if anyone is familiar with the YouTuber ContraPoints, but in her Envy video, she does discuss this movie, and she said, well, I think there's a lot of good class politics in here. If we're looking at it as a horror movie, it is a horror movie that the upper class has, of like, oh no, one day all of the people that have kind of just suffered so I could have a good life are going to come and get me.
Mhm.
I don't know if I entirely agree with her reading, but I think she was more saying, I feel like that is how wealthier people might view this movie and where they take the terror. Whereas I think other people are like, oh my gosh, how easily would it be for me to be a underground person versus an above ground, and how
It's
small that line is. How
it's
And how
secretly about the
arbitrary
French
it is.
Revolution.
yeah.
How arbitrary the line is. And also, I do think that the Hands Across America thing is important because it's like I don't think they necessarily want to do violence. They just see that that's their only option.
Yeah.
Again,
So
not subtle.
yeah, the scene I'd like to show, I said there's some great kills in this. One thing, I can't show it here, but there's a death involving a boat motor, which is the best boat motor death since I Spit on Your Grave, but just due to content, I can't show it. However, I would like to show a scene where we see the tethers attack the above ground people. And I want you to notice two things: how Jordan Peele will film certain scenes to not be uber violent, but also how he uses comedy to kind of diffuse a situation, but also build up tension. Also, I'm just going to say there's some language in here. F-bombs are dropped, but this is a film and I could not edit them all out.
Well, that's the clip you chose, you mad bastard.
What? Look, everything else, the lighting, it did not come out really well. So I'm like, all
That's
right,
fair.
we've got to use this one.
Josh, what was that?
What?
I heard something outside.
Okay.
Rustling, walking like a person. There's a person walking around outside our fucking house.
Be a squirrel. I don't know.
Would you please get up and look?
I'm busy. I'm busy. So. Maybe it's a pizza guy. Maybe the girls are ordering pizza.
Get up and take a look. I'm scared.
Oh, I don't want to. I want to stay down here. I want to just stay in my cozy spot.
Get up and look.
Jesus Christ. Hey, Ophelia, legs up.
Look.
I'm looking. My binoculars. Nice. Okay. Beautiful stars.
Are you really looking?
Yeah, I'm looking. Oh, shit. No, yeah, there's something out there.
Don't fuck with me, Josh.
I'm not fucking with you. I'm serious. There's something out there. Look behind the car.
Where? I don't see it.
By the car.
I
Look.
can't.
Oh, shit.
What?
Oh my God, it's OJ. That's OJ Simpson.
What is wrong with you? Seriously.
Ophelia, give me some Beach Boys.
Really?
Why not? So last night here, let's have a little party.
Julia, turn it down. Vibrations.
Just chill out, all right? There's nobody out there. Just go back upstairs. I'll be up in a few minutes. Everything's gonna be fine.
What's going on?
Nothing. Nothing, guys.
Jesus. The backup generator went on. We're just trying to figure it out. Go back to sleep. Just because we're in our rooms doesn't mean we're sleeping. Fine. I don't know. Go back to your rooms.
Guys, we have to be out of here at 10 a.m. tomorrow sharp, so. Hello?
Oh my gosh.
Softly smile, I know she was
Please stop. Stop it. Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys. Ophelia. Ophelia, call the police. Sure, playing Fuck the Police by NWA.
When I tell you that that scene in the theater had just the mix of emotions of laughing, horrified shock, and then back to laughter. And that's a very hard line to kind of walk, because you are watching something horrifying, but kind of using that humor to sort of diffuse the horror of the scene.
Can I quickly discuss my note on the scene, because I know it's one you've
Yes.
agreed with?
Yep.
So I know the clip didn't play it as well, but the choice of the Beach Boys music, I am genuinely convinced that Jordan Peele did that specifically as a nod to the Manson murders, especially considering
Yeah.
when you
Oh,
check
wow.
the credits, Tim Heidecker's Tether's character's name's Tex.
Yep. It's
Wow, that's interesting.
It is. But yeah, that it's a scene where, again, I see this in a theater and hearing the audience just react like, wait, what? I'm having a lot of emotions in one scene. And also, if anyone saw the Nia DaCosta directed but Jordan Peele written Candyman, the idea of seeing a kill from outside of the window is repeated. I think actually even better there than it is here. So moving on to Nope, which again, my favorite film of last year. Jordan Peele moves to the
My favorite Jordan Peele.
What?
I think it's my favorite Jordan Peele.
Ooh, I don't know. It's back and forth between the two. I think Get Out is just so tightly made. It's really just like a well-crafted film. You're like, man, there's no fat on any of it. But what Nope does,
There's no.
go on. Go on.
No, I'll let you finish.
Well, and here's my argument for Nope. What Nope does that Get Out doesn't do as well is Nope just lets you hang out with these characters and really get attached to them. And granted, Get Out functions differently. In Get Out, you're really just supposed to identify with Chris. But in Nope, Jordan Peele wants you to pretty much like everybody in this movie. He wants you to be invested in them. And what he does well is he characterizes these characters, even though they're flawed and they're broken and misguided. You do like them and you want them to make it.
That's what I think I like most about Nope. That's what I think like puts it over the top for me. That third act is fist pumping in a way that Get Out's third act is actually very sad sometimes.
Yeah.
But like Nope's third act, the Akira bike slide alone.
Yup.
You made a straight up blockbuster out of a monster movie, which that's hard to do now.
Well, and I feel like Nope is a movie that succeeds both as just a fun spectacle film and as a critique of spectacle.
Oh, yeah, because that's the subtext. Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if maybe that is why, we can discuss this more next month, but maybe that's why it did not get some Oscar nominations, because I think there might
Hit too close to home.
Yeah, James Cameron looked at it and was like, I'm in this picture and I don't like it. But the general setup of Nope is these two siblings, Em and OJ Haywood. They are the heirs to this Haywood Hollywood horses. They're black horse trainers. The legend of their family is that the jockey that is featured in one of the first moving pictures is actually their great grandfather. And actually, if you watch the trailer to it, there's a great moment where and you find out Em is just reciting her dad's script, but Daniel Kaluuya's character just goes, "Great, that's another great."
Grandfather.
Keke Palmer's such a joy in this movie.
She is.
Yeah, she's fantastic. But OJ is definitely more involved with the farm than Em. And one day he's out with his dad and he starts noticing stuff falls from the sky. And then all of a sudden he sees his dad, who's on a horse, fall off the horse. Turns out a quarter went right through his dad's skull. So it's like, how could something fall through the sky that much or that fast and kill a person? And what they kind of figure is like, oh, there's probably a plane or something. Like it's a sad freak accident. But 6 months later, they start to notice there's some weird stuff going on at this ranch owned by Steven Yeun's character. They're hearing weird noises, they're seeing these weird wind tunnels, and they're noticing that horses are going missing. And they're like, we think we might have a UFO, or now called a UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, on our hands, and they try to capture it. So it is a film that follows Close Encounter. I mean, clearly this is a Spielberg film, or it is Jordan Peele's take on a Spielberg film. It's the third act is just 100% Jaws, which I love, because you don't figure it out right away. It's not until you're like, wait a minute. Oh my God, it's Jaws. They're doing Jaws.
They're doing Jaws.
Yeah, but they also, it's the Close Encounters of the Third Kind, sort of that you have this question of, yes, we have something from another world, but is it entirely malicious? Is this UFO here to help us? Is it here to hurt us? And again, I'm not spoiling this movie because number one, we're screening it. Number two, I want people to see it. But when it is revealed what the UFO is, it's
Brilliant.
one where the advertising in the movie, and I have to give props to either Jordan Peele or whoever was in charge of advertising this, it was not given away.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They actively changed some lines so it wasn't given
Yeah.
away.
I also love when you watch the film and then you watch the first scene and then you find out what that first scene is.
Oh yeah.
I've been
Mhm.
having seen Jordan Peele films, I was like, okay, what is this movie going to be about? Is it's going to be about that first scene, but how is it going to be about that first
Yeah.
scene?
So if you have not seen this film, the film opens with and this film is also kind of an allegory about the treatment of animals on film sets too.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Not even subtly again.
not even subtle. But it is a chimp who was acting on a TV show, got startled, and ended up resorting to his own animal instincts and
Mhm.
severely injuring, and it's implied killed two other cast members.
Lassie
I
was
think it's
rabid.
beyond him. It's I would say that it's like beyond implied.
Yeah.
Like I think it's openly stated at one point.
Oh, I'd have to go back and rewatch. Actually,
It's
I just rewatched.
the official story isn't that it is, because they do that Saturday Night Live thing
Yeah.
and play it off like it wasn't a big deal, but then when you see it, it's clear
Yeah.
that the true story has been under wraps. Yeah.
Well, but it is so. But the film is about how far people will go to pursue a spectacle. So you have this horrific event that happened in front of a live audience taping of an animal attack that left two people dead at least, and a young actress severely disfigured. Which this was something I did not know. You see her later in like a veiled hat. I did not know that was a reference to a real thing.
That was a reference to a real thing that happened in Stamford.
Oh my gosh, the layers get deeper.
Oh, right where I'm sitting.
I did
Not
not
like
know
this
that.
town, like this city.
I think I'd heard about a woman got attacked by a chimp, but I assumed that must have been a fake story because I'm like, no one would own a chimp. That's dumb.
It was up near one of my ex-girlfriend's house.
Huh.
Up near the Merritt, if you know where that is in Stamford.
Yes, I know where the Merritt is.
Yeah, it's
I
up there.
I lived there for years.
I don't know. No one goes up to North Stamford unless you have a good reason. This is too inside baseball. I'm sorry.
But it is so. But you have, Steven Yeun's character references that this horrific event was immediately mocked on Saturday Night Live, and it
Chris
also
Kattan played the monkey.
yes, Chris. But it leads him to think, because I survived this, I might be able to. You learn that Steven Yeun's character is trying to turn the UFO into an attraction for his park. And let's just say it doesn't end well for a lot of people in the movie. And this movie is very new, so I don't want to spoil it too much. But while there's clearly the parallel about, how animals are treated on set, it's also a film that is about filmmaking.
I
And
really appreciated the character of the director, who I felt was very Werner Herzog.
Yeah, Michael
very
Winslow
much
with that great
the
voice.
Yeah, the world is made up of nothing but evil. Nature's there to kill you, and I'm just gonna make movies about nature being death.
The little song he does going into the third act.
Yep.
I have no idea how they pulled that off, made it serious.
And he's a
But
fantastic actor that has not got enough work. I believe he was in Robin Hood back in the 90s.
But I will say that we're all missing the most important theme of the movie, which is
Yes.
again that queer women can do the Akira bike slide.
Well, yes, I mean, clearly. But the thing the film, I kind of see it as about independent filmmaking versus the more mainstream Hollywood filmmaking. And you can also look at that as Black filmmakers, especially people like Melvin Van Peebles, who really had to scrape together to make their movies. You see the Haywoods and the people they work with, they're scrappy, they're resourceful, they can think on their feet. The way that one of the Haywoods ends up getting the shot of the UFO is very ingenious, and is all because they think quickly with the resources they have. And if you know anything about a lot of early Black filmmakers in the 60s and 70s, that is what they did. And not even just Black filmmakers, a lot of like the new Hollywood cinema film brat types. They worked in like they came up with the Roger Cormans of the world, where it was just, we stretch the dollar as much as we can. We will use whatever we can. Versus the Steven Yeun characters kind of representing the studio system in Hollywood, which has a lot of money, but the pursuit of spectacle is so big, they end up falling on their face. And if you want to do a parallel, the studio system in the late 60s ended up collapsing because so many big budget spectacles failed.
Hello,
and they
Dolly.
waste money. So
There's a lot of Western in this too, which I liked.
Yes.
Well, and I also like that when you guys screen it, I'm always interested in to talk to people about the ending because he has his own Shane ending.
Yep.
Shane is a great movie that people didn't realize they needed to argue about the ending till years later, and this is one of those movies that I've had arguments about the last scene of this movie. I've several people who disagree with me.
I don't know what your interpretation of it is, but like I put the arguments about that ending in the same like bucket as people who are like, I have decided that X% of this movie is all just a dream. And I'm just sitting here like, what does that accomplish then?
Yeah.
If we never learn that.
I put it as, I believe what we see at the end of the movie is real. And I'm going to leave it there.
I'm on the other side.
Oh,
Ooh,
Yeah.
get out.
I
Kick
think
him out of the...
that makes the 10 minutes before it less meaningful and actually not make a lot of sense.
Well, so I just put it as what we see at the end. It ties back to, well, I mean, again, I like the kind of the Western ending. Also, speaking of the Western, a great Black Western is referenced in this movie. There is a Buck and the Preacher poster in it. Also, Keith David just being in here, even for a few minutes, is great. But what we see at the end is, I believe, a direct callback to the jockey at the beginning.
Because I think whatever side you are on at the ending, I think he did it on purpose to have his Shane-like ending. Because that's one of the things that makes Shane so great, is you can walk away from Shane and be like, yay, the good guys won, everything's happy. And, well, there's the other option, which I think is more realistic.
Yeah. Well, it's also just based on Peele's movies. He hasn't done kind of a maybe it's not real yet. So I'm like, I tend to, that's why I also tend to go on, I think what we see is what happened. But I want to show you a quick clip from Nope. And one of the things I like about this is, especially with Midsommar, daylight horror has become more of a thing now.
Yeah.
And what Jordan Peele did in Nope was he made clouds ominous, and not even dark clouds, white fluffy clouds.
Oh, it's real.
I don't know what you're doing here, but it's illegal for you. Spams.
No. I went back and scrubbed the footage, and that cloud has been right there, at least since I set the camera up. Yeah, now you mentioned it. I'll probably not get a single damn cloud every day for the last 6 months.
So I mean, that's them in there, and we've been recording, so we got it, right?
Well, I mean, not quite, because the rest of the movie has to happen, but I kid you not, when a couple weeks after I saw this, Todd and I were up in Sunapee, and it was beautiful day just like that, like, oh, blue sky, white, white fluffy clouds, and now I'm like, great. Now I'm wondering if one of these is like, it's like, is that cloud actually moving or is it just staying there? But it's
Got it.
what I like about the three movies is we're seeing Peele progress as a filmmaker and get kind of bigger and bigger. But also one of the things I like is we've seen him, he keeps to a small main cast. He still hasn't had a huge ensemble piece. He keeps it to a primary cast of about 6 or so people, and that's it.
I hate making this comparison because he hosted the Twilight Zone remake, but I've considered him our generation's Rod Serling,
Oh, I think that's a very good
and I
comparison.
think that's why they got him for that
Mhm.
job. But
Yeah. So in terms of his signature style, I mean, there's still a lot of stuff that he's still growing as a filmmaker, but one of the things we're seeing right now is he has like a Peele stare moment. So in Get Out, it's Daniel Kaluuya while he's in a hypnosis session. In Us, young Adelaide sees something, and in the beginning of the film, we don't know what she's looking at. And he does it a little differently with Nope. The one I'm showing is Steven Yeun's character once he sees what the UFO really is. But there's 2 other stares at the end of the film. They qualify as spoilers. Let's just say, I'm going to say one of them is we look at Keke Palmer at the end. But there is another where we finally get to see a certain thing looking them straight in the eye. And I actually thought that's a very fun twist on the Peele stare.
Well, I thought you were referring to the ICU gesture.
Well,
That they
there is that, but well, again, let's just there is a whole thing of if you're trying to trap predators, sometimes you need to kind of break them and you kind of have to do a stare down. And again, we get to look into the eye of the predators. And it's a really good take on it. I'm like, oh, how this movie did not get nominated for visual effects and sound is beyond me.
cinematography,
Cinema, yep. Mm-hmm.
Editing,
he got
editing.
Christopher Nolan's cinematographer, and he did. I mean, he was amazing.
Yeah. And also another thing Jordan Peele does is his references. I feel like a lot of references can be very on the nose and kind of a look, see what we're doing. I recognize that reference. Peele's they're enough for you to tell, but he kind of makes it his own. So if you look in the upper left-hand side, we see Rosemary's Baby. And in Get Out, the Armitage family, Daniel Kaluuya's character's girlfriend's family, very much like the Satanist cult in Rosemary's Baby, right down to a Japanese member. And people asked him, like, was that a shout out to Rosemary's Baby? He goes, absolutely it was. Like, I did that specifically as a callback to that type of thing, because the Armitages and the Castevets and their friends are kind of the very same, like, wealthy upper class family that's actually hiding something kind of horrifying. On the upper right hand side, you see Dario Argento's Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and then Elizabeth Moss in Us. And this was not something people caught right away, but a couple of Italian horror nerds are like, oh my gosh, he actively kind of styled Elizabeth Moss to reach like this character in an Argento film. And as Ellie brought up earlier, the Akira slide. So if you're not familiar with anime, even if you haven't seen Akira, you may have seen this referenced. It's one of the most iconic scenes in any anime. And funny, he decided when he was filming Keke Palmer for this scene, he was like, we can either have her like stop the bike and jump off, or he goes, you know what, we have this really cool image. He asked Keke Palmer, like, do you know the Akira slide? She goes, yes, I do. And he's like, let's do that. And that reference came about organically. And he saw this not just as a way to be like, hey, everybody, a reference, but a way to enrich the scene that he was making. I always tell him, like, there's a difference between a ripoff and an homage. People like Jordan Peele, Guillermo del Toro, they do homages. I mean, they'll number one name their inspirations, but they will absolutely find a way to take what they love and make it their own. Also, interesting fun fact, Jordan Peele was approached to direct Akira, and he turned it down mainly in favor of I want to make my own movies right now. But I was presenting a program on Akira at Anime Boston last May, before Nope came out. And someone had brought that up, and I'm like, I love Jordan Peele, but I haven't seen him do anything on the scale of Akira, and I don't know how that would work out. Person came up to me afterward and said, so I have a friend who is a production assistant on Nope. Let me just say, you are going to be very pleasantly surprised by that movie. And the minute I saw this in the theater, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to find that person again and say, I know what you mean now. So a few other things that Jordan Peele does. He's still writing. He actually wrote the animated film Wendell and Wild this year, which if you're a Key and Peele fan and you know the character of Wendell, I'm like, he must just really like that name. He also wrote 2021's Candyman, which I think is overall good, although I think it's suffered from a lot of studio interference and editing because there are some parts of that movie that feel like they were just cut out. But very well directed by Nia DaCosta. I hope she stays in horror because I think she is really well suited for that. Television, Mark, you mentioned the Twilight Zone revival, which ran for 2 seasons. I think that kind of got not blackballed, but I feel just putting it on that CBS All Access kind of ruined it. It would have had
They've tried to reboot Twilight Zone so many times.
They do, but I feel like considering what a big name Jordan Peele is, had you put that on regular television, it might have lasted longer.
Yeah.
And he produces stuff like Black Klansman. He did get to work with Spike Lee, which he's named as an inspiration. And he produced a series like Hunters, which is on Amazon Prime, Lovecraft Country, which sadly didn't get a second season. I liked what I saw of it. And he's also producing podcasts. So, and clearly, considering all of his films make money, he's going to make more films. And we don't know what his 4th film will be. But I'd love it if he decided to just like surprise everyone and like Spielberg do a straight drama. Where it's like, nope, it's not a genre movie at all. I'm doing a dramatic film. Just like he does his own version of Empire of the Sun. He'll figure it out. And with that, I mean, I had to use this one. Does anyone have any questions? Or recommendations? If anyone wants to start with a Jordan Peele film, what would you guys say to start with?
I think Nope is probably the most accessible.
Really?
I think Get Out is. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Get Out and Us are both significantly more political than Nope.
Mhm.
And I'm not opposed to that. Like I love political movies. I am a political scientist. So I think that Nope is probably going to be it's the most straightforward. It has, Us and Get Out both, Us in particular both have a lot of ambiguity, a lot of questions that are never really answered. Whereas Nope is like, once you are at the end, it's pretty,
Okay.
there's a lot of mystery
Nope's-
going into it, but most of your questions will get answered.
Nope's
Okay.
the most mainstream, but if you want to like do a festival, if you do it in the order, you kind of see the ramp up with the budget
Exactly.
in a way.
Mhm.
Get Out's a small movie. Us is definitely the middle, and then Nope, he basically has the money to do what he'd like at that point.
Yeah.
Even then, he still only has like what, a half dozen characters in 2 major locations.
Well, I think he used it on the crew
Alien.
and the cinematography and the
Mhm.
sound, which is amazing.
Yeah.
That's why it looks so good.
The sound in Nope is some of the best sound work I have heard in years.
Yeah. There's a lot of good technical misses this year for the Oscars.
We'll get there. Last year, I thought the technical nominations were on point. This year, I'm like, what happened?
Especially cinematography. I don't know why they missed out on so many this year for
The
cinematography.
Northman. Yeah, it's if I had to say, I would actually say Get Out is the first one because, and I think all of his films qualify for this, but Jordan Peele makes genre movies for people who may not think they like a genre movie.
Mm.
Like I've told people, if you don't like a horror movie, you'll still like Get Out. You might even like Us. Us is actually, I think, the least accessible of the three
I
because
agree.
it's so pulpy and B movie. I think a lot of people, especially people my age or younger who may not have that frame of reference for film, may not just get what it's may just not get what it's doing.
I know people who hate Us because it makes no sense. So it's
It's
yeah.
not supposed
I know.
to. Monster
I know.
movies don't
I
make
know.
sense.
I know.
Or Nope. Nope is one though where I feel like you would have to watch Us first to get Nope. I feel like Nope might be more disorienting for someone because I had someone who hadn't watched Get Out or Us saw Nope and she was really like, wait, what? Why did I see stuff about the chimp? And versus everyone I know who had seen his other films were like, oh, okay, here we are.
So it's like watching Inland Empire first for David Lynch.
Yeah,
Don't
just
do
like,
that.
what am
Is
I
what
doing?
everyone should do.
Don't do that.
Everyone should watch Inland Empire. Watch it with your children.
No, don't take Ellie's advice on that one. There's a lot of
Uh.
things I mean, I joked. I'm like, you could arguably watch Nope with like someone as young as like 10 years old, probably. If your kid can watch Jaws, your kid can watch Nope.
Yeah,
I don't totally agree. I think Nope gets more overtly horrific than Jaws
So
ever does.
So does Jaws.
No, Jaws never has the scene with the house.
Jaws.
The scene with the house.
The
You know what? I
rain,
was going to
the
disagree with
rain.
Ellie, but she's right. The scene with the house is as frightening as anything that's in Barbarian or Terrifier. For last year, that one scene is my jaw opened in that scene. It was like, good for you, Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
The thing-
All right. I
The
just
thing
I
with
remember
Jaws
being.
is
Oh, go
the
on.
thing with Jaws here is because because they were famously plagued by the low budget shark. Most of the carnage is either off in the distance or you're only seeing the aftermath.
I'm just gonna
Jaws
say
can happen too. That's the other thing.
I saw Jaws when I was 10, and the little kid, Alex Kidder, when you see I'm assuming the dummy of the kid just get like
Yeah,
that
that
freaked
one
me out.
shot. Yeah,
That one shot scared me so much. So I'm like, yeah, I can handle that. You can handle Nope. This is why I don't have kids, and this is why my Todd sisters do not let me show movies to their kids because they're like, oh no.
I know it'd be fine.
Hey, I'm still trying to warm them up on kaiju
watch
movies.
the thing.
So one step
Yeah.
at a time.
Have you seen Dead Alive yet?
But yeah,
Dead Alive is not scary at all. Dead Alive is
No,
hilarious.
but it's hard to watch.
yeah, but I think everyone's on the page of Get Out or Nope. Us might be the third one you watch. But yeah, that's mainly because I think Us it's a little too pulpy for regular. I don't want to say regular audiences, but I do think
You regular people.
well, because with streaming, there are not a lot of old pulpy movies on streaming unless you know where to look. And I feel like a lot of younger audiences who did not grow up with that just do not have that reference and are not going to get what the movie's doing. So it's but if you are young and you are interested, come to the reference desk. I will tell you where to start looking. Tubi has so much of this stuff for free. With that, we're almost ready to go, and so I'm going to thank everyone for being here, and have a good night.
Night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.